Welcome back to Sealess Social Studies. As you can see, I kind of moved myself to the middle of the screen today when we cover the Compromise of 1790, or what we call the Dinner Compromise. Kind of a strange name to have, like the Dinner Compromise, when you talk about American politics.
Hey, it's Sealess Social Studies.
But here it is. Why do we call it the Dinner Compromise, and why do we call it all this other stuff, right? The Compromise of 1790. Well, what's going on in the Compromise of 1790? As you remember from what I mentioned in the past one, Alexander Hamilton feels that the national debt would be a blessing to America. He knew that establishing this national debt would give the United States a good line of credit, which is what we need to be able to trade internationally with European nations, specifically England. Right? So we need to accrue the debt of the states to be able to start paying it back, to include ourselves in the big pile of debt so we can have better credit, so then we can trade with other nations. So Hamilton proposes this. The government should pay back the country's debts at face value. Don't give a decrease in the value of our debts. We want that debt because the more debt, the better credit we have. He feels that, number two, we should assume the state's debts. The federal government should take these debts accrued by the Revolutionary War. What you see here, the $37 million that the Continental Congress approved, as well as $114 million through the states, mostly northern states, accrued during this war, the Revolutionary War. So Hamilton says we should take all of that money and make the government assume those debts so we can have a better line of credit and ultimately pay those debts off face value. We will have great credit. We will be able to trade with foreign nations. So that's Hamilton's idea. Pay these debts off and accrue these debts. Okay. So Jefferson is like, no way, Jose. Jefferson, the anti-federalist, says the national debt would be a curse. He and most of the southern states oppose the government assumption of states' debts. Why? Because the southern states, like Virginia, doesn't feel that they should be taxed. There's that no tax right there. They feel that they should not be taxed to have to pay back this debt because they've already paid their debt, and it's not their fault that Massachusetts can't pay their debt. So they're like, nah, bad idea. We shouldn't do it. The northern states accrued that much money from the war. They should be the ones to pay for it. We should not have to get taxed for this. The southern states are like, we can't do this. This is a bad idea. So you have two heavy hitters. Hamilton, which we've covered, the Federalist. Jefferson, the Anti-Federalist, also covered. They are going head to head, and there has to be a decision. So Jefferson's like, I kind of got a good idea here. This is where the Compromise of 1790, or the Dinner Compromise, comes to be. Now, when you look at this side of the screen right here, you would think that I'm part of this compromise because there's a great group of guys here. You got Hamilton, Madison, Jefferson, and Selah. These guys are the ones that shaped our nation. Yeah. So the Compromise of 1790, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison of Virginia, he belongs to the House of Representatives there, and Alexander Hamilton, the Secretary of the Treasury. They meet and over a literal dinner party to discuss the ideas of assuming the debts and moving a capital. Jefferson and Madison are Southerners from Virginia. They're like, hey, the capital was in New York. The capital was in Philadelphia. It's always in the north, the north, the north, the north. If the capital stays in the north, us Southerners are going to get stomped on for the rest of eternity. So they're like, I have a plan. And here is the Compromise of 1790, the Dinner Compromise. The southern states, like Madison and Jefferson's Virginia, said that they will not block Hamilton's plan for the government of assuming the state's debts. You want the government to assume the debts? You got it. But in return, the North has to agree to move the capital, which was always in the North, now to the South, on the banks of the Potomac River, of where it is located today in Washington, D.C. So our capital today, in 2020, when this video was made, was put in place by this compromise that was made over dinner between three guys. Hamilton assumed, or the Hamilton made it so the federal government assumed the state's debts from the Revolutionary War. And in exchange, which makes it a compromise, the capital is moved to its present-day location of Washington, D.C. on the Potomac River. So this small compromise between three guys, unofficial really, has lasting implications throughout today. So who ultimately wins? Just kind of like what we covered before. Ultimately, Hamilton gets what he wants. The government assumes the debts. We stay out of the French Revolution. We continue to trade with England. Hamilton keeps urging the government to build a strong international economy, which today we have, and he wants to create a national bank. This national bank, again, is going to have private investors. It's going to control the economy of the United States. And in 1791, with Southern opposition still, the Bank Act is passed, creates the first national bank in the United States. And if you were to sit there and say that which one of these two gentlemen, whether it's Jefferson or Hamilton, has the most effect on our country's history, you can't say that because they both had such a huge footprint placed in the United States of America. But when you talk about who did what, when it's the economy of today, it is very strongly based on the ideas of Alexander Hamilton. Our economy in 2020 still shares a lot of ideas of the Hamiltonian economy. The United States as it is, as citizens, as farming, as agrarian nation, as expanding, is Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson purchased Louisiana Territory. You'll see when we go on, and that kind of goes woo with that strict constitutionist thing. So you have to watch that strict construction of the Constitution, that bites Jefferson in the bum. You have to watch that, but both of these gentlemen have left a huge footprint on the United States of today. So go ahead and study all this stuff about the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Go ahead and go back. Make sure you study to take your test. Good luck.